Shalom, my friends. Today I'm going to read a story called Just Stay Put by Gary Clement. And it's really a pretty silly story that takes place in a mythical place in Jewish folklore called Helm. And Helm is a place where everything's kind of upside down and topsy-turvy. And so this book, Just Stay Put, takes place in Helm. The little village of Helm consisted of only a few dozen shaky huts, a main street, an old synagogue, a shabby marketplace. The people of Helm were like people in villages everywhere. They were hard-working and honest. They were peasants and peddlers. They were fishmongers and farmers. They were barbers and babysitters. They were this and they were that. They were also extremely silly. Of course, the good people of Helm never actually thought of themselves as silly. In fact, they felt they were quite clever, wise almost. And the villagers believed that their town rabbi was the wisest Helmite of all, perhaps even the wisest man alive. So how wise was he? Here's an example. One day, the rabbi was stopped on the main street of Helm by a group of villagers. "Rabbi," asked one, "tell us, which is more important, the sun or the moon?" "Why, the moon, of course," responded the rabbi immediately. "At night, when it's dark out, the moon enables us to see. During the day, when it's already light, who needs sun?" The rabbi had once again proven to the villagers that a great sage lived within their midst. Do you want another example of how silly or clever the people of Helm were? Listen. At one time, there lived in Helm a man named Mendel. He was a good husband and a kind father, but he was also very lazy. All he did all day was dream. He dreamed of being a great genius, capable of solving all the problems of the universe. He dreamed of being able to fly like a bird. But most of all, he dreamed of traveling. "I've spent my whole life in Helm," thought Mendel. "I'd like to see a little bit of the world." Mendel's wife, Malka, was like Mendel, good and kind, but sometimes she could not help but be angry with Mendel for being such a do-nothing daydreamer. "Mendel," she would ask, "when will you get a job already?" "Okay, I'll think about it," Mendel would say. "And when will you be thinking about it?" Malka would ask sharply. "When I get a job," Mendel would answer calmly. One day, Malka asked Mendel, "No? So what are you daydreaming about this day?" "Traveling," Mendel answered quietly. "And where exactly will you travel, Mr. Big Shot Traveler?" asked Malka mockingly. "Well, I've always wanted to see Warsaw," replied Mendel. "And how will you get to Warsaw? Will you fly like a bird?" "Oh, Malkala, if only I could," groaned Mendel. But the sad fact was that Mendel and Malka were very poor. They barely had enough food to feed their children and the few scraggly geese that they kept in their yard. "I'm stuck here forever," thought Mendel sadly. That very night, Mendel had a dream. He dreamed he was in a great town. All around him were magnificent buildings on streets that stretched as far as the eye could see. The road teemed with people dressed in the most fabulous clothes. It was crowded with circus animals and acrobats, elaborate horseless carriages, and vendors selling everything under the sun. "Where am I?" asked Mendel dreamily. "You're in Warsaw, my friend," answered a passerby. Then Mendel woke up. "That's it," he decided. "I've got to get to Warsaw right now, this minute." It was silly, still very early in the morning when Mendel quietly got dressed, packed his bag with some bread and onion, filled his water flask, and left his little house. As the villagers of Chelm rolled this way and that way in their feather beds, Mendel took his first steps along the dusty road to Warsaw. At first, he found the walking pleasant, enjoyable even. The sun wasn't too hot, the breeze was gentle, and there weren't too many holes in his old boots. But as the day wore on, Mendel wore out. By the time the sun was high in the noon sky, he was ready to stop for some lunch. He found a shady spot by the side of the road where he sat to eat his modest meal. After eating, he felt an overwhelming urge to nap. But if I nap, thought Mendel, how will I remember which way I was walking when I wake up? In a flash, he thought of a solution to this tricky problem. He removed his boots from his feet and placed them near the road, toes pointing to Warsaw. This way, even if I forget, my shoes will remember. And with that, Mendel fell into a deep and contented sleep. As he slept, a poor shepherd passed by with his meager flock. Seeing Mendel's boots, this shepherd said to himself, I could do with a new pair of boots. Mine are old and full of holes. Maybe I'll switch boots with this sleeping peasant here, and who will be the wiser? The sly shepherd picked up Mendel's boots and gave them a thorough inspection. These boots have more holes than my own, thought the disappointed shepherd. Faugh, they don't smell too good either. You can keep your boots, mister. So the shepherd dropped Mendel's boots exactly where he found them, only now the toes pointed the other way, back to Chelm. Mendel awoke refreshed and ready to continue his adventurous journey. He eagerly put on his boots without noticing, even for 1 second, that they had been turned around and that they would take him directly back to Chelm. As Mendel resumed walking, he noticed that everything he passed looked strangely familiar. But how can this be, he thought. I've never been on this road before. Mendel walked on. As the sun began to set, he approached a small village. Can this be Warsaw, he wondered? It looks exactly like Chelm from here. Mendel entered the village. He recognized every building and every person he passed. Not only that, but everyone he passed seemed to recognize him. Hello, Reb Mendel, said someone who looked exactly like Pinchas Garfinkel, the butcher. Lovely evening, Reb Mendel, said someone who looked astonishingly like Sonia Noodleman, the mayor's wife. Mendel continued walking, too amazed to even whisper hello in return. Before long, he found himself in front of a house that looked remarkably like his own house. Children played in the front yard. They looked just like his very own. Papa, come play with us, they shrieked. And then the most amazing thing of all happened. A woman who was the spitting image of his own wife, Malka, leaned out the window of the small house and yelled in a loud, stern voice, Mendel, where have you been all day? It's dinner time already, and look at you, you're filthy. Come in, wash up. Children, come. Mendel entered the house as if he was entering a dream. This house looks exactly like my own house back where I come from, he said. Mendel, what are you talking about? What do you mean where you come from? Asked Malka. I've traveled a great distance. I've come from the small village of Chelm, said Mendel with a certain amount of pride. Oi, Mendel, noodlehead, this is your home. You're from here, sobbed Malka. How is it that you know my name, madam? Asked Mendel. How do I know his name? He asked. Nudnik. I'm your wife, Malka. We've been married 16 years, remember? That's funny, said Mendel. My wife back home is also named Malka. In fact, you look just like her. You could be her twin. Ugh, he's completely meshuggah, screamed Malka. Help, somebody, call a doctor, call the rabbi, just call somebody quick. In a matter of moments, it seemed like the whole village of Helm had crammed itself into the tiny house. I've never seen anything like it, grumbled the doctor when he heard the whole story. Yes, a very tricky situation, commented the rabbi as he sat down, stroking his beard deep in thought. After a few moments that seemed like hours, he cleared his throat and spoke. Tell me, Mendel, if you are here, where's the other Mendel that used to live here? I suppose he must be in my home back in the village, reasoned Mendel. In that case, continued the wise rabbi, you should stay here until the other Mendel that used to live here returns. When he comes back to his home, you can return to yours. So Mendel waited and waited many years for the other Mendel to return, but strangely enough, he never did. Every now and then, Mendel thought about embarking on another journey, but he always decided against it. What's the point, he would always say to Malka. If one place is exactly like the other place, one might as well just stay put. I hope you enjoyed this very silly story of Helm, and maybe you can look up some other stories from Helm. Have a great day.